CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. Today, my guest is Stephanie Cannon, and her podcast is titled A Marathon, Not a Sprint. Thank you for coming on today, Steph.
Thank you so much for having me.
And speaking with you, we talked about your passion for running. Why is this a passion?
It was actually something that I never enjoyed doing when I was younger, which sounds funny to say now, but I was definitely the kid in high school that hated when my PE teacher said we had to run the mile. So this was definitely not something that's been a lifelong passion for me, but it feels like it at this point because it'll be 8 years in January that I've been running on a regular basis. But I was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, and I distinctly remember running into somebody that I knew at, I think it was like the grocery store, and they asked me how I was doing. And I was very quick to give answers about what my kids were up to and their developments and what they were doing and what my husband was doing at work. And I realized later after I went home that I didn't say anything about myself. Mm-hmm. It was all about, other people in my life. And
a lot of times women or stay-at-home dads too, they kind of fall into that group where it's like all about everybody but yourself.
Yes. And that was a pretty big realization, as simple of a conversation as it was with this person. Mm-hmm. I realized, wow, I didn't really have anything to say about me. And I don't have, any accomplishments that I'm doing right now. My kids are an accomplishment. That's not to take away anything from them. And so it was around that point that I started thinking, I need to have something that I do that's for myself that I can be proud about. And it's not even really a bragging thing. It's just being able to say, hey, I accomplished this thing.
Or that, you did it for yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I happened to be at a meeting that was for moms. It was like a moms meeting group, and we would have speakers every now and then. And one of them happened to be a local runner by the name of Justin Levine. And he had recently I'm in California. Mm-hmm. I'm in Central California, and I am about halfway between San Francisco and LA. And he had recently ran from Central California to Los Angeles. And he talked about his journey and how he did that. So
that's quite a lot of distance.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. And so he had something that stuck with me is he said, if you're looking to do this, not just run to LA, but to get out and run, mm-hmm. He said, a lot of people say, oh, I'll do that next week. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll start tomorrow. Oh, I'll start next month after the holidays or after, X thing is over with. And he said, why not today? Why not right now? And that was
walk fast, do something.
Yes, exactly. So that's how it started.
Cool. Okay. Well, I know running gives you a lot of time to think. I used to be a track runner in high school, and I used to run in college. I haven't since, but life happens. But when I ran, I'm ADD, so I'd always have music in my ears, but it's still, because I am ADD, allowed me to listen and process at the same time, and some things that were going on. It just gives you time to process your world around you and think and try to figure stuff out. So is that the same thing it does for you then?
Oh, big time. And I'm also a comic writer. I'm a writer and creator. Mm-hmm. I have a content creation company called Insumetry Creations with my business partner, Matt Knowles. Okay. And so writing is another big passion of mine. Mm-hmm. And
I identify with that as well.
which is great. So you kind of get what it is, you kind of get lost in it. It's some mm-hmm. people that aren't long distance runners sometimes have a hard time wrapping their heads around the fact of, how can you, think while you're running, but you do just kind of zone out a little bit.
I mean, when you're running for a little while, like when you first start, you're just trying to concentrate on breathing and not passing out.
Yeah. And sometimes depending on the weather,
exactly.
That could be.
And when you're in the move and you're in the groove and you're getting used to it, like in Texas, the heat is brutal. We get upwards of over 100 easy. We're currently supposed to be in our winter time, and right now in November when this is recording, we're still in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
running outside is difficult.
in my area of Central California, it's the same way. We're easily 100 and upwards of 110. And so I
Mhm.
have to get really early to run so that I can try to avoid that as much as possible. And we are also,
Like,
unfortunately, the worst air quality in the nation. So that, and I have asthma, so that makes
oh
it a
no.
little bit difficult too.
Yeah, and then you're like praising for the days where rain is coming down, where people would be like, "Why are you running outside?" Because I can breathe.
Yes, yeah, because the air is nice and clean and it's not, doesn't feel like we're running through thick smog.
So you've got a lot on your plate. You've got two teens. You're a comic book artist, a business owner. You're an author. Can you please share your story with us because you have a rather unique story?
So it kind of encompasses a lot of different things, but one of the interesting things that has come about recently, and by when I say recently, I mean kind of developing over the last year or so, is I grew up an only child.
Mhm.
And when I was around 12 years old, my parents sat me down and kind of explained to me that I was conceived via a sperm donor because my dad had had cancer when he was in his early 20s, and they were unable to have a child together.
Mhm.
And they, I think they picked a really good age to tell me this, because at 12 I kind of was like, okay, it wasn't really this earth-shattering thing, because my dad was my dad. He was the man who raised me, and that was
Mhm.
kind of, I went about my life, and that was always how I viewed it. I never really, and it didn't really change much for me.
Mhm.
Um, but I always kind of thought, I probably have half siblings out there somewhere, and I wonder what the donor was like. And it was more of a, what's the family, the heritage side of it, are there medical things, there was all these kind of little things that I always wanted to know about.
I have a
And
question about that. How were you able to find out his identity? Because I thought that that was anonymous.
well, it is um unfortunately, in this day and age, with the way that technology is, it's pretty easy to find things out. And a lot of times, back then, it was in the 80s, it was kind of considered taboo a little bit. Nobody really wanted to say that they were kind of doing these types of things. It wasn't, I guess taboo is not the right word, but it was kind of just this thing where you said, we're going to do it, but it's going to be, no, we don't need to talk about that very much. So I did 23andMe, and
That's probably where it connected.
yeah.
I've heard, and I have a friend who actually his daughter found him through doing that purely
Yes.
by accident.
Oh yeah, and it's yeah, and I have heard stories before of people that go on there just to do, just for the heck of it, not looking to find anybody, and then they find. In fact, 23andMe will have you sign something that says, I realize that some of the things that I may find out might be shocking, or they kind of, because there's just, and it runs the gamut too. I mean, you could, because they give you kind of some health information too, so you could probably find some distressing things out that way. But I immediately found several half siblings that popped up, right away when I got my results.
Oh wow.
So it's because if you do it, you can, say, if you know, I allow other people to see, their relation to me and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I
So you went
started a
from
conversation.
an only child to how many half siblings?
Well, at the time I think at the time there was maybe 4 or 5 that were on 23andMe, but to date there are 11 of us, so I have 10 half siblings.
Holy cow! Christmas
Yeah.
has never been the same again.
No, when you go from only child to that many overnight, essentially, yeah, it's pretty shocking. But
How do you process that?
I was in shock for probably a good like 3 days, I think. Even though I knew the possibility of knowing that I had, siblings out there was very real. No, thinking about that and actually knowing that it's the truth were two different things. So yeah, I was in shock. I was,
A
and
lot of
now
running.
and a huge blessing, because uh, we're very fortunate that we all get along. We
Mhm.
are all kind, intelligent, talented people that have a lot in common. And
Mhm.
so getting to know them has been a lot of fun.
Very cool. I mean, wow, that would just be mind blowing. That alone would be a book.
Yeah, yeah, that's what everybody says. They say, yeah, you guys need to go on, one of the morning talk shows or something and talk about everything that's happened since then.
Have you had any contact with your dad? I know you mentioned the half siblings. What about your actual, not your dad, but your birth father?
So the donor happens to be somebody that's pretty prominent in his field that has to do with a lot of stuff related to that. So he's written a lot of papers and books, and that was why we matched with a cousin that was related to him, and that's sort of how we found him.
What does he say about suddenly having 11 children?
Well, we all kind of did a lot of research about how to handle that kind of thing, and found that there's actually a lot of donor conceived children who are finding their donor dads, or there could be, donor moms, because there are women who will donate their eggs as well. And they will send, usually it's just a letter that says, and for all of us, we all come from different walks of life, different situations. The majority of us just wanted to know, a little bit of family history. Hey, does cancer run in the family? Where do we come from? Those types of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of us were really wanting, a spot at Thanksgiving dinner. So, when you send a letter like that, that it could go any way. It could go positively, it could go negatively, or somewhere in between. And the response that we received, and I think too, because he is a known person, he's prominent in the fields that he's in, caused him to kind of want to not pursue anything. So, but we were all kind of emotionally prepared for that answer. But even when you're emotionally prepared for that answer, it's a little tough to hear sometimes.
I'm sure. But you've got two parents that love you and that raised you, and
oh yeah. And the big takeaway from that is that I have 10 siblings now that I care about and I'm developing relationships with, and it's just fun to see.
That's very cool. So how do you juggle everything? I mean, if all of that was just on its own, that would be a lot to juggle. But like I said, you're a mom of two, you're an author, you write comics, you are a business owner.
Yes.
So, and you're a mom. So how do you juggle all of that? And okay, I gotta ask, how did you process this with your kids?
That was so
that just popped into my head.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because they're used to not having cousins, and so or aunts and uncles. So to kind of sit them down and say, and it's good that they are the ages that they were. If they were smaller, I probably wouldn't say anything to them at this point. I would wait until they were older, because how do you tell a little kid, that kind of thing? And even my youngest is 10, almost 11. Even he doesn't quite get the concept just all yet about that. But they're excited, and they think it's really cool that mom has a whole bunch of siblings now. So, but as far as juggling everything, I don't get a lot of sleep. But
running.
Yes, I do a lot of running, and running is my sanity saver. If I did not have that, I think that I would have a much more difficult time dealing with things, because when it feels like it's difficult for me to juggle everything, when I feel a little overwhelmed, when it feels like, okay, how am I going to get all of this done? I wake up in the morning and I start my day off running, which is always difficult, especially this time of year. Even though we get hot here, we get pretty cold too. So now it's cold and it's dark, and it's
dark. That's the kicker. It's dark, and it's dark long.
Oh my gosh. And this time of year is the time of year that drives me nuts, because it's dark when I start my run and it's dark when I finish it. And that after a few months,
you can't even do it early, because it's getting dark at like 4 and 5 o'clock.
Oh yeah, exactly. And my day is pretty much a typical work day. I get on, my business partner and I are on video chat all day long, working on things, writing. My kids are doing their, in this day and age, they're home doing school via Zoom. So we're all kind of sequestered to our own rooms. And so that has been an interesting change to being home alone during the day when they're at school. But I thrive on being busy and having a lot to do. And, what's the next goal? Okay. And kind of compartmentalizing them, breaking them down a little bit. But as far as running goes, that's kind of how I start my day. That's how I can get, and we were talking earlier about, you know, being in our head. I've written stories in my head while I'm running. And I do like to, I listen to music a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts actually when I run too, especially during the weekday when it's kind of shorter runs, because I feel like it just sort of centers me a little bit. But I will kind of find that I haven't listened, I haven't heard the last few things that were said because I've kind of drifted off and thought about, you know, X, Y, and Z things that I have to do for the day.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So we mentioned author. Can you explain to those who are listening how that applies to you?
So I am
different than me.
So we like to say content creator because that kind of encompasses a lot of different means of writing, but I am mainly a comic writer. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a writer since I was about 10 years old. And, you know, life got in the way. That was the whole, you know, stay-at-home mom thing. And right around the time that I was thinking that, okay, you know, running is a good thing that I can get into and you know, have that accomplishment to feel good. It was right around that time that I thought, yeah, you know, I would really love to pursue writing as well. I always wanted to do it. So I really kind of sort of fell into it. Mm-hmm. I realized that some of the story ideas I had in my head, I'm a big nerd. I love comics. I've, you know, I haven't read them since I was a kid, but since I was a teenager, I've read them. So I realized.
I mean, when we talked before we got on here that I'm part of a cosplay group. And so ours are like live action storyboards. Yours are more cartoon storyboards, but It's the same concept.
Exactly the same concept. It's still telling a story in a visual way.
You have to actually be a little bit more creative to do the comic and the live action storyboard versus it's a different mindset for like my novels, because my novels can go really in depth. They can go into people's heads. They can, you know, tell a story a different way than the comics, but the comics has the visual aspect to it. So that adds it to a different level. So they're kind of equal, but they're two different ways of writing.
Exactly. And with comics, they often say, you know, show, don't tell with the art. You want the art to show a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And as a writer, because I can't draw, neither can my business partner. So we have to actually have artists come in. And the way a comic is created, there is a script that's much like what you would see with a movie script. Mm-hmm. It describes what's going on the page. It breaks down the panels. And then the artist gets that and renders what it is that you have in your head. So it's an interesting and different process, but yeah, you have to really think about those types of things, because as a reader, you're going to be picking up this comic and you're going to be wanting to see something that's also visually appealing.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of put you into the scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
So people who want to find you, how do they find you online?
So the easiest way to find me, we actually just revamped our social media and website presence. So the name of my content creation company is In Symmetry Creations. Mm-hmm. The website that kind of encompasses everything that we do as a team is insymmetrycreations.com. It's INSYMMETRYCREATIONS.com.
Awesome.
We have a Facebook page that's facebook.com/INSYM, INSYM. Mm-hmm. And then I have social media. I'm Steph Cannon Writes on pretty much everything. I'm Steph Cannon Writes on Facebook and Instagram. I think on Twitter it's S Cannon Writes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we just the other day finished kind of getting all of our stuff, because there's comics that I worked on before we teamed up and formed our LLC. Mm-hmm. And there's stuff that he's worked on, and so it's kind of a cornucopia of stuff that is everything that we've created.
Gotcha. Now on your website, the In Symmetry Creations, is that where they can find all of your social media links and everything?
Yes. Yeah, we've got all our social media links on there, email, and any kind of way to see what we're up to and what I'm up to.
Awesome. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to add?
So aside from, all the places that you can find me, and, we just released a trade, which is the collection of the 3 issues that we did. We did a 3-issue series. It was a medieval fantasy series. We launched that on Kickstarter and did really well. And the trade is kind of just collects all the issues together into a single book. So you can find all that on our store. That's the newest thing that we have going on. There's going to be a lot coming up in 2021, hopefully. As you know, I'm sure comic conventions have not been
It's painful. I've been missing them big time.
We missed them.
Like 4 or 5 scheduled for this year, and they just kept canceling on us, and it was just like each one was like a gut-wrenching experience. I'm like, oh no, I miss my con people.
Oh my gosh, it's the same way for us. And we were going to go to Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle in March, right when everything happened, and so that got canceled. And it's just kind of been slowly trickling. So the hope is that there will be some live appearances and shows in 2021. I mean, we're kind of all hoping that we can go back to that.
I mean, the virtual is okay, but actually going to a con is a totally different experience.
It is
when you're standing beside the character,
Yeah.
And there's some, I mean, they get creative. One of them was like 9 feet tall. He was walking around on stilts the whole day.
We've definitely seen characters like that before, and it's just kind of fun. And you get that, I think the face-to-face interaction that you get with people, fans that come up to our table, is you can't replace that completely with anything else.
Yep, I was gonna say that it's completely whatever.
Yeah,
irreplaceable experience. You just
making the most of it.
Yeah, so. And you have this. People don't understand the Comic-Con high. When you're done, because you've met all of these people, and sometimes the stars just walk around, and that's what's cool about it is to it as the people who are attending. So when you can literally talk to people, or some of the Comic-Con people, the cosplayers, when you can literally talk to them, it just adds to the experience. And you're on such a high that when you go the next day, you have, like, we call the Comic-Con hangover.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, it takes us days to recover sometimes from all of that. And you're on all day long talking to people. But we've had some fun experiences where we've been able to hang out with people that were in Mandalorian and, Flash Gordon, and, so it's
Star Trek and Star Wars. And
absolutely. Yeah.
It's a wild experience. So anybody who hasn't gone to them, I mean, I honestly would say just do one. Once you do one, you're not gonna go back out. It's gonna be like an addiction. You'll be like, okay, when's the next one?
And I've done everything from San Diego Comic-Con all the way down to, little tiny one-day shows in malls, and they all are fun and interesting in their own ways.
Mm-hmm. They're a blast. And you get so many different creative people like yourself.
Yeah.
Who are artists. One of them, we had a 3D artist who came, and for those who can't see it, I'm holding up a baby Groot and a baby Mandalorian, baby the child, baby Yoda. And it was a 3D thing, and they're only $15 a piece, and they're about 3 to 4 inches tall. And they're not breakable. So, I mean, they are, but they're not as breakable as you would think. But they created them on a 3D printer and painted them. And it's just different things that they had on their table were like cutouts and made with lights, making like light shades out of them. And
it's crazy what you can do with a 3D printer.
But then there are artists like yourself, and I have one on my wall that's of the 3 doctors in the Day of the Doctor.
Yeah,
Doctor Who, and it's just the stuff that people come up with. The creativity is just mind-boggling. Some of the cosplayers, a friend of mine had these wings because she was like a female Loki.
Right. Yeah.
And her wings, basically, she had marks on her shoulders, and because they were so heavy by the end of the day. But to come up with the creativity, they were literally made of feathers, and it's just like
it's insane, the creativity. And we have some really good cosplay friends. I mean, I was telling you before, I think that we were on the air, one of our titles is a steampunk title. So we're always in some kind of steampunk cosplay when we're at our booth and on shows, and, just kind of around, but it's kind of evolved over time. I've kind of gone away from just corsets and wanting to do, so we try to tweak it in different ways. But we have a lot of cosplay friends that do both steampunk and just, anything. And the creativity and the things that they come up with, we've just seen some wild things that, it doesn't, and it doesn't even need to be expensive. We have a friend who gets all of his stuff from thrift stores, and he has a garage full of cosplay items that he's just picked from, Goodwill or wherever else, and made amazing costumes out of them.
Yeah, the creativity is crazy. But I'm sure that inspires you too when you get to go to them, because you see all the different things around you, and it probably triggers stories in your brain.
Oh yeah, being around other creative people in general always helps feed that inspiration to, and it could be the smallest thing too. And my business partner Matt and I often say, we will say one thing and it could just be a general sentence, and we go, hey, wait, that
sorry,
we could go somewhere with that. Sometimes it's just a little spark, that's all you need. And that's just from being around somebody else that's creative, being around creative people, and you just kind of feed on that.
And the thing I think we could take away from all of this is, with the many different aspects that we even talked about today, is that life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Don't kill yourself to get stuff done. Make sure to take some time for yourself, whether it's running, writing, painting, drawing, whatever creativity outlet that you can come up with, center in on that. Make sure to take care of yourself as you're going through it. Because like I said, you processing all of a sudden having 10 siblings would be like, holy cow.
Oh yeah.
On top of all the creativity just to pull out everything else. And so, take the time, like I said, whether it's running, writing, drawing, even musical instruments, whatever it is, creative wise that you can do. People are like, well, I'm not creative. No, everybody's creative with something.
Absolutely. And it's about finding whatever it is that you can be passionate about. And kind of like how we've spoken through this whole thing, running is not for everybody. I get that. I know there's a lot of people that would say I could not be passionate about that at all. I hate running. I used to say that too.
I'm running, somebody's chasing me, and you better run faster, because
that's what I used to say. That's exactly what I used to say. But for me personally, it was the one thing that could ground me, start my day off right, make me feel accomplished, give myself goals. I went from being happy that I could run for 2 minutes straight, and I've ran 2 full marathons and 17 half marathons, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's all about finding something that can ground you and kind of get your head in the right place to do whatever else it is you need to do on your day to day.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your heart and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. For those who are interested in finding out more about Stephanie Cannon and her various, what's the word I want, creativity outlets?
Yes.
You can find her on insymmetrycreations.com. It's INSYMMETRYCREATIONS.com.
That's correct.
Thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real, where we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of CJPetersonWrites.com. Until next time.